Here we go. To pass the time, Thank Weasel had an open box of toothpicks in front of him at the table at which he was seated. Thank was earnestly attempting to learn new toothpick wrangling skills in an effort to keep pace with his older brother, Think. Thunk was busy with tools across the brothers' cave, maintaining the antique twin prop plane that Think had passed off as a spaceship to the director. Thank had already learned and replicated many of Think's toothpick tricks. However, Thank believed he could outmaneuver his toothpick-chewing brother. Just then, Think strolled into the cave carrying a small hard plastic suitcase which he set on the table, upsetting the open box of toothpicks in front of Think. "Boys, this is the solution to all our problems," declared Think. Thunk dropped his tools and approached the table. The three brothers looked at the only label on the case, which read 94 Pu, radioactive plutonium. Think now spoke with a grand sense of pride in his voice. "Pew 94, boys. If anything can get that stinker of a plane into outer space, it'll be this here Pew 94. I know it." Thunk seized Think by his coat, pulled him close, and whispered something. Flicking his toothpick, Think said, "I got it from the foundry, of course." "We were promised resources and jobs after the Babylonian contract," said Think. "So I improvised. That's how I roll. I'm fast and out of control," said Think, smiling broadly. Thunk whispered again to Think, who replied, "You really need all this jazz on this list?" Thunk nodded, picked up the small case, and walked across the cave to the twin prop plane. Think tipped his toothpick, and he and Think set out to retrieve the materials that their brother Thunk had requested. Next scene. "Yay! Great, Papa got the Pew 94! The young weasels suddenly jumped from their places on the floor. Flint and Pinky's Shadows Theater dissolved as they all stood ready, watching as their rowdy boys lead the story's intermission. As the boys were fully engaged and frolicking about the den, Flint and Pinky took advantage of the break and shared several smooches. Pinky then straightened herself, clapped her paws loudly, and said, "Who wants a snack?" Stink, Stank, Stunk, and Flint were all jumping up and down in the air while shouting, "Me, me, me, me!" Raspberry tarts with sweet oats baked into the crust were brought out and shared. The boys took up their positions in front of the wall, and the Shadow Theater continued. Next scene. Somewhere, light years from anywhere, 4 statuesque and unique androids were hovering around the rim of a massive materials cooking pot. The first android had a skin of unknown substance that was surrounded by a constant blue, easygoing, licking flame that was always flickering, humming, and pirouetting around his body. This was Inferno Android. The second was covered in the smoothest crushed black velvet, upon which were set precious gemstones of every variety known and yet unknown. The only places not decorated were the soles of her feet. This was Bijou Android. The third looked like an ancient tree with a kind countenance and a broad, tall body with strong, gnarled limbs and a vacant bird nest teetering from a small branch atop his head. This was Ligneous Android. The fourth was highly irregular and exceptional indeed. This android was covered from head to toe in small pieces of mirrored glass that were fit and formed perfect against each other, almost like the watertight scale suit of a reptile. Only 2 steel gray eyes could be seen through the mirror scales. This was Echo Android. The 4 androids were still hovering and still watching the contents of the massive materials cooking pot. The androids watched as the Mason reached far into the cosmos to extract the desired raw materials for their new sibling. The Mason sniffed and licked each raw material for quality assurance as many pieces were rejected. The Mason was designing this toy for a purpose that was as bold as it was unique to any of the androids created thus far. Finally, the Mason had acquired the correct set of raw materials consisting of magnesium, cesium, and cobalt. With a splash and a dash into the cooking pot, they went. Then the Mason pivoted to a smaller cooking pot with a great ladle, meant to fit his massive hands. He took up the ladle and brought forth up to his lips a simmering and steaming concoction. The 4 androids dutifully watched as the Mason heartily drank the ladle dry and then refilled it. Exhaling in a satisfied fashion, the Mason spoke. "Ah, yes, I do love a nice pasta fagioli." The androids only knew that sustenance was necessary for all life. Therefore, the purposeful causation of complex flavors was frivolous. The Mason pivoted back toward the massive cooking pot of raw materials, still with the ladle full of soup in his one hand. All 4 androids honed their attention to the full soup ladle as it was too close to comfort to the raw materials pot. Then the Mason began a story, gesturing wildly with both hands, making the androids nervous about the pasta fagioli and the now swinging ladle. "Did I ever tell you about the time I went fishing with my cousin Doug on the planet called Earth?" The attention of all 4 androids was riveted to the ladle that was now in motion. "First of all, it was a very, very long time ago when he and I were young. So was Earth for that matter. So all the land was in one big mass with water surrounding it on all sides. The most beautiful fishing spot, the likes of which I have not yet seen again." The ladle was becoming more animated now. Inferno's blue easy-going licking flames grew slightly taller. Bijou's gemstones tightened in place, showing only slivers of her smooth, crushed black velvet skin. Lignius was making slow, deep, creaking noises. Echo's mirrored scale suit flexed rapidly once, cascading down from the top of his head down to his feet. The Mason carried on with the fishing story, becoming more wild both in gesture and speech. "My cousin Doug, standing up to his knees in the crashing surf, cast his line, and in moments it became completely tangled. Then, in one clean jerk motion, I took his pole and straightened the line out for him. Doug cast again, and I moved down the shore and cast my line. The tackle traveled for an entire league, it did, before it broke the water. The androids were watching the ladle closely as it swung about. However, the Mason was highly calculating, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He was testing his toys. Every time he began to swing the ladle, he would adjust the pitch of the bowl of the ladle to mitigate losing even a drop of pasta fagioli. He continued the story, frolicking in place as he boomed with his narration. "My cousin Doug caught the first fish. It was a 200-pound tuna, and it was this big." The Mason used both hands for the measurement of the tuna, so the androids had a visual aid. "Then I caught a grouper, and it was this big." The Masons gave sloppy hand measurements, causing all 4 androids to further bristle to attention. "Then Doug caught a huge great white shark, and it was this big." To coincide with the Masons' over-exaggerated hand movements, Inferno's flame made an audible pop and roar, growing taller. Bijou's gemstones made an audible clinking, and now no black velvet skin was visible. Lignius's body creaked and moaned, and also growing taller. Echo's mirrored scales were snapped into perfect position to render him virtually invisible except for his steel-gray eyes. The Mason brought the ladle to his mouth and drained it dry. All 4 androids returned to their at-ease positions. "And then just then I caught an enormous blue whale, and it was this big." Faster than any of the androids could react, the Mason pivoted around, back again, throwing the ladle full of steaming pasta fagioli into the air directly over the material's cooking pot. The androids scrambled and flew like blurred streaks of colors, retrieving the oversized ladle and the uncontained airborne soup. The Mason watched carefully as the androids did not account for one small drop, which did indeed fall into the materials cooking pot. All 4 androids were now hovering next to the rim of the oversized cooking pot, supporting the massive ladle. "Well done, everybody. That was perfect. Does anyone know the moral of the fishing story?" Bijou now spoke up. "Never go fishing with your cousin Doug?" The Mason succumbed to roaring laughter that sounded like thunder itself, and when he had quieted himself, Echo spoke. "Cleverness," he said, "is needed to achieve a goal that lies behind the rules." The Mason, being omniscient, already knew that Echo had, by utilizing his mirror scale suit, witnessed the maverick drop of pasta visual breach the surface of the materials cooking pot. "Indeed," said the Mason. Lignius, Bijou, and Inferno all leaned and looked at Echo, to which he clink-clank clinked his scales together, rendering himself invisible, and shut his eyes. Crispin, Llewellyn Chandler... next scene. Crispin Llewellyn Chandler was extremely worried, and he walked into Dahlia and Giselle's office. Today, neither his gourmet coffee nor the peanut butter chocolate chip cookies could comfort him. Dahlia and Giselle listened to the director's tale of woe, the entanglement with the Weasel brothers, and most importantly, the wager. The Foxes saw immediate opportunities for being in league with the Weasels, namely, it would afford them valid reasons to visit pub on the island. After drying the director's tears and helping him blow his nose, Dahlia and Giselle reassured him that they would depart for pub on the island that very afternoon and began earnest negotiations with the Weasel brothers. Now, having given him 2 coffees and 2 cookies, the Foxes rang for Ophelia, indicating that the director would be in the garden. The director left the Fox's office and also his own through the wrought iron glass doors into the mezzanine and into the garden beneath his favorite oak tree to meditate and be mindful.